day, students! On behalf of your teachers, I welcome you all to a new set of lessons in Mathematics 8. In this session, we are expected to identify the hypothesis and conclusion of if-then statements, write if-then statements, and determine the truth value of if-then statements. Study carefully these images. Then find out what is common to all of them. The quote, parking rate, offer, and product slogan present situations with conditions and their corresponding results. These are just some of the many real-life applications of what we call conditionals. Conditionals are sentences that present situations and their possible outcomes. I am Teacher Isa, the one who will be with you as we move along to learn more about conditionals. Are you familiar with this mode of transportation? What about this note posted on it? This is an example of what we call a conditional. A conditional sentence is a sentence that gives a condition and the outcome to that condition. Which among these lines gives the condition? Which among these lines is the outcome to that condition? The condition is no face mask, no face shield, while the outcome to that condition is no ride. The condition is what we call the hypothesis, while the outcome to that condition is what we call the conclusion. The hypothesis and the conclusion are the two parts of a conditional sentence. Let's study more examples of conditional sentences in different forms. Let's have the first one. If someone is not wearing his or her face mask and face shield, he is not allowed to ride a public utility vehicle. This conditional sentence is in the form if hypothesis followed by the conclusion. Let's identify the hypothesis and the conclusion of the given conditional. Its hypothesis is someone is not wearing a face mask and face shield. Its conclusion is she or he will not be allowed to enter a jeepney, a taxi, or a bus. Next example. I will not be allowed to enter a PUV if I don't put my face mask and face shield on. This conditional, on the other hand, is written in the form conclusion followed by if and the hypothesis. Let's identify the hypothesis and conclusion of this conditional. Its hypothesis is, I don't put my face mask and face shield on. Its conclusion, on the other hand, is, I will not be allowed to enter the PUV. Let's move on to the third example. If I see somebody entering a jeepney without his face shield on, then I will tell him to wear one before getting in. This conditional is written in the form if, hypothesis, followed by then, conclusion. Thus, the hypothesis of this conditional is, I see somebody entering a jeepney without his face shield on. The conclusion, on the other hand, is, I will tell him to wear his face shield first before getting in. It's now time for the last example. Listen closely. Wearing your face mask and face shield properly is making everybody's safety a priority. This conditional neither use the words if nor then. Can you still identify which is the hypothesis and the conclusion? Let's find out. The hypothesis of this given conditional is this one. Read. Wear your face mask and face shield properly. Its conclusion? Make everybody's safety a priority. Take note once again that all of the examples that we have already discussed, starting from the note until the very last sentence here, is what we call a conditional sentence. Take note, however, that not all conditional sentences are written in the form if, hypothesis, followed by then, conclusion. If two simple declarative sentences are joined by the words if and then that conditional sentence is referred to as if-then statement. The statement introduced by the word if is what we call the hypothesis. The statement preceded by the word then, on the other hand, is what we call the conclusion. The hypothesis is represented by the variable P, while the conclusion is represented by the variable Q. It's now time for us to write conditionals in their if-then forms. Let's start with the first example here. Can you read it for us? All together. I will help save the environment by recycling bottles, cans, and paper. This, in its if-then form, is if I recycle bottles, cans, and paper, then I will help save the environment. It is this part of the given conditional sentence that is introduced by the word if, since it is the condition. It is this part of the given sentence that is preceded by the word then, since it is the outcome to the condition. Next example. A squared minus b squared divided by a squared plus 2ab plus b squared is equal to a minus b all over a plus b. Can you identify which is the condition and which is the outcome to that condition? Okay, I hope you were able to do that. Now, it's time for us to write it in its if-then form. Here it is. If a squared minus b squared is divided by a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, then the quotient is a minus b all over a plus b. Let's proceed to our last example. Let P be two planes intersect. And let Q be their intersection is a line. Transform this into its if-then form. Its if-then form is if two planes intersect, then their intersection is a line. We are done transforming conditional sentences into their equivalent if-then forms. Take note, though, that not all if-then statements are true. This time, let's find out if the sentences that will be flashed are true or false. Tell me. Sentence number 1. If an animal is an insect, then it has 8 legs. False. Why is that so? Because if an animal is an insect, then it must have 6 legs. Just like ants, bees, flies, butterflies, and beetles. What about the statement? If the price of a product rises, then the demand for that product falls. Is it true or false? The sentence is true. Take note, as the price of a product increases, the lesser the number of people will buy that certain product. Last example. If two angles are congruent, then the angles are right angles. Is it true or false? This statement is false. Why is it false? Not all congruent angles are right angles. Sometimes they are acute, obtuse, or reflex angles. An evidence showing that an if-then or a conditional statement is false, just like the evidence for statement number 1 and the evidence for statement number 3, is called a counterexample. An example that goes with the hypothesis but contradicts the conclusion is a counterexample. In sentence number 1, the counterexamples are mosquitoes, bees, ants, butterflies and beetles. In sentence number 3, the counterexamples are acute, obtuse, and reflex angles. Here are more illustrative examples on counterexample. Let's have sentence number 1. If one eats properly and healthily and exercises regularly, then she will have optimal health. Is this true or false? This particular example is true. Do we need a counterexample for it? No more. But let us justify that this statement is true. Take note that when we eat healthy and when we exercise regularly, our body becomes in good condition. Thus, this statement is true. Next example. If babies feel hungry or wet or want to be cuddled, then they giggle. True or false? This particular sentence is false. Why is it so? Because babies don't actually giggle when they feel wet or hungry. What do they do instead of giggling? They cry. That is their language. Last example. Here it is. If the sum of the measures of two angles is 180 degrees, then the angles are complementary. True or false? The answer is false. Why is the sentence false? Take note that if the sum of the measures of two angles is 180 degrees, the angles are called supplementary angles. We say complementary if the sum of their measures is 90 degrees. In this video, we have learned that an if-then statement is a conditional that is composed of two parts. The hypothesis, which is represented by the variable P, and the conclusion, which is represented by the variable Q. A hypothesis is actually the condition, assumption, or premise. The conclusion, on the other hand, is the outcome, the result, or the effect. Not all conditional sentences, on the other hand, is true. If we can be able to state an example that opposes that conditional, then that conditional is false. The evidence showing that that conditional is false is what we call a counterexample. Congratulations, students! Another set of treasures has been added to your learning box. See you again next time for a new set of lessons.